it's they got the Southwest Museum stuff, so they don't.
Oh, that's true.
I don't need my pitiful things anymore. But no, I've been collecting stuff. We lived in Flagstaff.
Yeah.
For a while when I was like 5.
Let me take the guitar.
Close enough.
Add a little more soda for
You're
you.
good?
Yeah.
You're good, Jim?
For a sec, yes, sir.
All right, all right. So first of all, talk about the reaction you're getting to this record has been, what I've seen, just universally amazing, which you're no stranger to good reviews. But what's that like, this point in your career, having such great things said about your music and what you're doing?
Well, I don't know if all the reviews are universally good.
What I've seen.
But, well, you know, you just, as you mature as an artist, and you know, you just want to keep getting better. You know, some people, you know. Good morning. Hi. Nice to meet you. How are you? Well, the response has been really nice, you know, because you're doing other people's songs, and I'm doing songs by songwriters I really admire, and you don't want to let them down. So yeah, we tried to make it a good record, and my attitude about my career in general is to try to get better each record, you know, and do it in an organic way. But yeah, try to get better and better. Get to be a better singer. Get to be a better songwriter. Get to be a better guitar player. You know, so it's nice to get good reviews.
You talk about not letting them down. Is there more pressure then when you do other people's songs? Is there a whole different vibe that you have to kind of live up to a certain standard?
Yeah, you got when you're doing other people's songs. There's a lot more pressure because when you're doing your own songs, you go, oh, that's okay. I wrote it. It's fine. You know. But when you're doing, you know, a Tom Waits song or a Merle Haggard song or a Brian Wilson song, yeah, you got to try your best because you know those guys are perfectionists. And you know, when somebody's music touches you and means a lot to you, you know, whether it's, you know, one of the famous songwriters or whether it's just a doo-wop song you hear on oldies radio that you're singing in the shower, yeah, you want to do it good. You know?
Now, how many of these artists are people that you've been able to spend time with over the years and kind of share your love for their music with them in person?
Well, some of the songwriters are friends of mine, you know, David Hidalgo and Louis Perez from Los Lobos and Tom Russell. Other songwriters are people that, you know, I would say are acquaintances that I've worked with, like Tom Waits, and you know, I've done a couple shows with Jackson Browne. But in general, you know, a couple of them are just people that I've met. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm a big fan, you know. I am a fanboy. And then other people, of the ones that are still living, you know, some of them just, you know, they fill me with awe and terror, you know, because it's like, oh my God, that's Merle Haggard. Oh my God, that's John Fogerty. Oh my, you know.
Right.
So.
What's it like at this point in your career, though, having people, younger artists, that probably approach you the same way? You probably already had that for a number of years. Is that fun to have, you know, both sides of that dynamic? People go out there and they cover your songs and they emulate what you do?
Well, I don't know if that's the case. You know, I mean, I don't know. I tend not to think that way. You know? I just think, you know, gee, how do I pay the mortgage? That's all really how I'm thinking.
Why this group of artists at this point for this record? Because you've covered songs before and done, you know, maybe similar albums with cover songs. Why this group now? Why team it up as West of the West?
Well, I did the record. Well, I did a record about 5 years ago that won a Grammy of all traditional folk songs, and it was called Public Domain. And this, in some ways, maybe is part 2, except it's not public domain songs. And there's a lot of reasons I made the record. One reason is you know, I love my home state, and I think there's a great breadth of songwriters here, you know, and a lot of other states. Most other states can make the same claim, but I'm from California, so I did a California songwriters record. You know, somebody from Minnesota can do the Minnesota record that's got, you know, Prince, Bob Dylan, and Paul Westerberg, you know, or you can do the Indiana record with John Hyatt and John Mellencamp. You can do, you know, the Texas record, be an 8-record set, you know.
Sure.
So, yeah, I'm just a Californian, and I'm a 4th-generation Californian, and this was, you know, I kind of did this for my mom. You know? Yeah, she was the Californian.
When were you real conscious of kind of that, your own fascination with those songwriters in that world, and at what point, either as a kid or in your music career, did that all kind of come together for you?
Well, when I was a kid, my mom's family kind of instilled a sense in me that I was a Californian, and and so as growing up, as I tried to define myself and figure out who I was, yeah, I kind of, anytime I found out anybody from Captain Beefheart and Frank Zappa to, Charles Bukowski, hey, they're Californians. Really? Okay, well, I'm going to check it out,
Right, right.
So there was a bit of that, just, you're just looking to define yourself as a human, and see where you're from. And then as you get older, you start doing that to define yourself as an artist.
Mm-hmm. Which artists on this record do you maybe feel the closest to, or a certain kinship with? There's certain people that you've maybe emulated your whole life that I don't know, Brian Wilson or...
Well, the people that I feel closest to are probably the ones that are friends, like
Mm-hmm.
the guys from Los Lobos and Tom Russell, and I've just on a personal level I feel close to them. But yeah, there's one or two, say Merle Haggard or John Fogerty songs that just make you kind of get a little misty-eyed at 2 o'clock in the morning after a couple beers. Or Jon Stewart, the great songwriter Jon Stewart. When I first heard him was on a TV show when I was like 12, and he did California Bloodlines and July You're a Woman, and they were sort of California-based songs, and that just touched me
Mm-hmm.
as a kid. So
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, they all affect me in one way or another.
Mm-hmm. What's it like to kind of have the camaraderie or kind of a kindred spirit with the kind of California artists? Is there a certain essence to like when the ones that are you guys maybe still hang out with, the guys in Los Lobos or Stan or some of these people? Is there a certain vibe that you have maybe with other artists, a certain thing that you share that maybe it isn't said but you're conscious of?
I don't think it's ever said. It's just, I don't know, they're just, it's really, I know a lot of Texas songwriters. I'm a big fan of Texas songwriters like Guy Clark and Terry Allen and Butch Hancock and Joe Ely and Robert Earl Keen and people like that. And they all kind of think of themselves as Texas songwriters. Where California songwriters, because it's so diverse, and even though everybody kind of overlaps in weird ways, everybody, because California, you got, on one hand, if you say your average person elsewhere, who's the great California songwriter, most people say, oh, Brian Wilson. And yes, he is. But then there's also Merle Haggard, same thing, born and raised in California, same as Brian Wilson. And you would think that those two worlds don't meet, but in some ways they do. And so it's not like there's a club somewhere where all the California songwriters go and hang out, but I think there's an open-mindedness and a willingness to experiment and explore that kind of marked, say, 40 years ago, sort of the development of songwriting in California, and that maybe didn't exist in a lot of other places. And these days it exists everywhere, but 40 years ago, yeah, this was one of the few places where you could mix all the styles together, and perfect example being the Grateful Dead, because the Grateful Dead could play. 1 minute they could be doing an outer space free jazz jam, and then a minute later they're doing either an old jug band song or a Merle Haggard song. Mm-hmm. So, and that's sort of the California attitude about things, I think.
Mm-hmm. And you guys did that also early on with the Blasters, obviously combining different kinds of music. And how do you look back at that kind of legacy now and what you were doing and how people took you then and kind of how you guys got back together? Just kind of like...
Well, I think with the Blasters, people were put off by our pompadours. You want to put people off to have pompadours. Well, I look back at the Blasters, and we along with a few other people were sort of responsible for bringing a certain credibility back to roots music, and because when we started playing the type of music we did, kind of mixing blues and R&B and rockabilly and hillbilly music all together and Cajun music, those types of music were pretty low down on the hipness scale. And so, yeah, us and, like I said, a few other acts kind of made it okay to like that kind of music again, made it acceptable.
Mm-hmm. Was it the fact that you guys always had the chops to kind of, the acclaim was kind of there and you guys, kind of stayed with it even, throughout the years? Was there a lot of bands at the time, punk bands, didn't quite have maybe the musical expertise that you guys had? Well,
we were brought up, my brother Phil and I and all the Blasters were, we started hanging out in blues bars when we were little kids. And so we learned kind of firsthand from T-Bone Walker and Big Joe Turner and Lightning Hopkins, people like that. So yeah, when we got to be adults and it was time to like sort of make our serious music, yeah, it had to represent that. It didn't necessarily have to be the old, you know, the music of the old bluesmen, although we did lots of that, but it had to represent that in a way, and that always, you know, as they say, you know, don't leave home without it, so, you know, don't.
Mm-hmm. You got a lot of acclaim for your public domain album and the Grammy that you mentioned. Knowing you do another album like this, and some people look at these kind of albums maybe even different than original albums and their songs, maybe some people know, some people don't. You conscious of the fact that another Grammy could be coming your way, or that kind of acclaim?
I don't think about it. When I won the Grammy, it was like, I don't think about it, because when I won the Grammy, it was about as likely as going out on a date with Salma Hayek. And so it's just not a part of my reality. So when I won, it was just like, you know, you might as well have told me that, you know, men from Mars are on my roof. It was great, and I treasure it, and, you know, but I don't think men from Mars are going to come and land on my roof again. I really don't think that way, because it was too stunning. You know what I mean? It was, how did that happen, you know? I'm sure there were a lot of people walking around sort of similar to when Milli Vanilli won a Grammy. How did Alvin win a Grammy? I was doing the same thing. How did this happen, you know? So, but, yeah, you know, if they want to give me one, I'll come up and pick it up.
Sure. Talk about your drive and how you keep going, and you're still on the road a lot of the year, and you're always playing. Talk about the fun you still have just as a musician, and kind of that, just true. You like to be out there with a guitar and doing your thing.
Well, playing music, you know, I love the sense of community, especially in roots music. You know, there's a real sense of community between the audience and the musicians, and I love that. You know, I could live without the motel rooms and the truck stop food and the interstates and all the things that 10, 15, 20 years ago I thought was wonderful and glamorous. Now it's a grind, but, you know, on the other hand, I get to, one, make a living doing what I love to do, and I've been really fortunate at that. And two, I get 2 hours on stage where I can do anything I want, and most people don't get that. So yeah, it's all in perspective. Yeah, okay, so you got to drive 800 miles from the Thursday night gig to the Friday night gig. Big deal. You got that 2 hours, you know, and most people in their lives never get that 2 hours.
Great.
So,
talk about the mix of fans you must have now as an artist has been around, in terms of like how wonderful it is to see new fans out there at the shows that are maybe hearing you for the first time, mixed with people that have been loving you for 20 odd years.
yeah, I have a pretty mixed crowd, you know. I have, you know, people that were Blaster fans. I have people that never heard of the Blasters before. I have folk music fans. I have blues fans. I have country fans. I have rock and roll fans. I got truck drivers and you know, and corporate lawyers. So it's kind of, you know, that's kind of neat. You know, I've always felt that roots music, no matter whether it was blues or bluegrass or rockabilly or singer-songwriter, folk music, whatever it is, there's a huge market for it. It's just how you access that market, and there's a big community for it. And yeah, so that's pretty special. You know, I feel pretty blessed.
What are some of the main lessons you've learned? Is there a certain motto you kind of, or a certain credo you have as an artist now that you kind of carry with you?
Well, you always want to put on a good show. You know, you always want to have, that was the rule in the Blasters, and that hasn't changed, you know. Play every gig like it's your last, because it very well could be. And and you get a good lawyer and buy a van and, you know, save your money.
This album's been out a few weeks, right?
2, yeah.
Yeah. When a new album comes out, how exciting is that still for you to have a new album out there in the world? And is it just as exciting as it was from day one? Is it like a new beginning for you every time a new record is unleashed on the world?
Yeah, it's still pretty exciting. I never got really jaded, you know. The fact that, yeah, again, I've been doing this for 26 years professionally. I quit my day job 26 years ago, and there's been, you know, some rough times, but I've never had to go back and do a day job again. And so that's always in the back of my mind is, you know, I can't complain about too much. And I forget what the question was. What was the question?
How much writing are you always doing? In the middle of all this, are you writing original stuff the whole time?
Yeah, well, you know, any songwriter or poet or novelist, you know, if they're standing at the hamburger stand, you're writing a song, you know, or you're writing whatever in the back of your brain. So yeah, I go through periods where I'm actually getting up every day and sitting with a pad of paper and a pencil, and then I go through other periods where I'm just walking around going, what rhymes with orange, and so yeah, I mean, ask anybody that's married to a songwriter or dating a songwriter, and they'll tell you they'll be talking to their mate, and the mate will just have this faraway look in their eye, and come on, honey, we got to take out the trash, and the songwriter mate will just be going, trash, that rhymes with crash, and that rhymes with
Right.
cash. And that's the way it is.
Is that nice to always have that kind of, creative spirit within you? That must be a great feeling walking down the street, being at the hamburger stand, knowing that that's going on. It's like a friend you're always kind of living with throughout the years.
It's a curse and a blessing. Everybody's got that. I think everybody walking down the street's got that little voice inside of them. That's their creative side, whether they're, laying bricks for a living or conducting the LA Philharmonic.
Mm-hmm. When do you switch it up after this? Is there a chance the Blasters will start doing their thing again?
Well, the Blasters, the original Blasters may do something. You never know. I always like, when you're a solo artist, you pay all the bills, and you take the good reviews, you take the bad reviews. So every now and then, yeah, either with John and Exene from Max, we go out as the Knitters, or every now and then, I don't know. There may be the original Blasters get together and do some gigs. Mainly it's just a vacation for me, those kind of things, because I don't have to pay the bills. I just show up and play guitar and leave. Mm-hmm. But what I do now is what I do, and it's what I love to do. So, as far as doing anything else on a serious level, no.
How much do you kind of let yourself think about your own kind of iconic LA rock status? That's something that it ever pop, you read something or you hear about, or when the latest review, is that something you ever let yourself kind of ponder for even a minute?
No, because once you start thinking about that kind of stuff, well, one, I don't consider myself that. To me, people like Jesse Belvin, the great R&B singer from LA, that's an LA icon. Brian Wilson's an LA icon. I'm a schlub. I'm just a guy that, I'm a barroom guitar player that writes songs sometimes, and that's, and once you start thinking of yourself as an icon, then you can't go to the burger joint, you can't put one foot in front of the other, So I don't think of myself that way because I don't see myself that way because I'm not that. Mm-hmm. And anyway, I don't know if you make any more money if you reach icon status, so it doesn't matter. Hey, he's an icon. Give him $100,000.
Right. When you're playing these songs off the new record, and you're kind of embodying these songs yourself, do you go to another place? Are the other artists left you? The other artists with you? Is it then a Dave Alvin song? Or are you thinking of Tom Waits? How much of that are you channeling? How much of that has become something else?
You're channeling a little bit, But what I tried to do on this record, and anytime I do a cover of somebody's songs, what I try to do is blur the line between the songwriter and me. So I tended to choose songs for this record that sounded like songs that I could have written or did write, So it's like, is that a Dave Alvin song, or is that a Merle Haggard song, or is that a Tom Waits song? So you try to blur the line. But yeah, when you're doing it, you're always thinking, one of these songwriters could be in the audience going, oh man, no, don't do that to my song, And so you always got to take that into consideration, the songwriter's feelings, because when people have recorded my songs, my attitude has always been great. Do whatever you want to it. Make it a polka. I don't care. Just do my song.
Yeah.
But I know that there's other songwriters that are, if you change one word, if you change to the, they might sue you. So you always got that in your mind. If this is someone else's song, treat it with some respect, hopefully.
And how many of these artists have actually have heard the record, and conversations have you had anyway about what their thoughts on it?
Yeah, I've talked to Tom Waits and David Louis from Lobos and Tom Russell, and thumbs up from everybody. Mm-hmm. So.
Does that feel really good? Do you ever nervous they're actually going to be in the audience? You invite them to the shows? You ever nervous about it?
No, I don't. No. Do I get nervous? Yeah. But no. Do I get nervous about songwriters being in the audience? Sure, but I got other things to be nervous about, really. You know, like
Yeah.
I said, if you do a good job, if you're sincere, I think it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Mm-hmm. Well, lastly, just sitting here in this great house surrounded by this great, the Kachina dolls and the books and the memorabilia, what kind of an inspiration is the stuff you surround yourself with in terms of the California artifacts and Western stuff? And
Well, I think that to me, I always liked folk art, whether it was music, you know, blues, rhythm and blues, string bands from the Appalachia, you know, honky-tonk singers, doo-wop singers. I always liked that kind of stuff, and yeah, Native American art and artifacts and all that stuff. To me, that they're just like blues, you know. It's just part of the American thing, you know. That's what we made. It's what we are, and so yeah, that's what I do. That's what I'm part of. I hope.
yeah, well, that's for sure. Very good. All right.
Okay. So. Was that looking like the wise old man on the mountain? Yes,
The old man.
it's a fine clarinet.
I was waiting for your hand to go like this, at which point I was going to have to go.
Well, then Bobby would have said something.
Yeah, exactly. No, it was
What's
more
that?
okay.
No,
Like, what?
I don't think anything's gonna kill that voice. It was emanating just for.
Yeah.
Care if they miss me, 'cause I never remember their names. They say if you get far enough away, you'll be on your way back home. Well, I'm down at the station, baby, but I can't get on the train. Must be blind love. The only kind of love is stone blind love. Yeah, blind love. Oh, God damn it, sorry. Are you getting everything kind of balanced?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now you're gone, and it's hotels, whiskey, and sad luck dames. And I don't care if they miss me, 'cause I never remember their names. They say if you get far enough away, you'll be on your way back home. Well, you know I'm down at the station, baby, but I can't get on the train. It must be blind love. It's the only kind of love is stone blind love. Yeah, blind love. The only kind of love is stone blind love. Must be blind love. The only kind of love is stone blind love. Blind love. Stone blind love. Now the sky has turned blue, the dogs are barking, and the night has come. And the tears are falling, baby, from your blue eyes now. And I wonder where you are. And you know I whisper your name. And the only way to find you, baby, is if I close my eyes. I'll find you with my blind love. It's the only kind of love is stone blind love. Yeah, blind love. I'll find you with my stone blind love. Must be blind love. It's the only kind of love, stone blind love. Yeah, blind love.
Yeah, that would be best.
That's what works, John. Why you're having fun anyway? You
Yeah.
can somehow play off of something behind and make it a little.
Okay.
That work.
Yeah, sure.
Ready?
Yes, sir.
And I've been born in New York City, a New York City girl I know, working in the concrete, not the sunlight, living in that New York rain and snow. But there's California bloodlines in my heart, and a California woman in my soul. There's California bloodlines in my heart, and a California heartbeat in my soul. I think I might have never known you if I'd have lived my life in